Meanwhile, the right now is trying to make it about this the latest guy to come out, and this now there is a national security advisor who was in on the call because he's an advisor about Ukrainian relations. He was born in Ukraine, speaks Ukrainian, grew up in this country, served in Iraq, a lieutenant colonel, I would imagine, heavily vetted, more so than, say, like a Mike Flynn type of guy. And he has now come out to be the latest person to basically say, like, yes, I express problems with this. In fact, their exchange, this is what he's released some of his testimony. I think he's going in to testify, I don't know, within days, if not today. He says, Vindman, this is the guy, Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, top Ukraine expert on the National Security Council. He was part of this small group of people in the White House who was assigned to listen to Trump's July 25th call to find out how badly he was going to F it up. And that must be what it is. It's like, oh, you're on fire duty today.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, you're firehouse today. Yeah. And Vindman and his family fled the Soviet Union. It was the Soviet Union at that time when he was 3. He was assigned to the White House in July of 2018 after a tour in the Pentagon, where he writes that he authored the U.S. military's principal strategy for managing competition with Russia. In the spring of 2019, I became aware of outside influencers, that would be Rudy Giuliani, promoting a false narrative of Ukraine. This alternative narrative undermined U.S. efforts to expand cooperation with Ukraine. Vindman cites a July 10 meeting in which Gordon Sondland, this is the hotelier who gave $1 billion to the inauguration campaign, became the ambassador to the European Union, emphasized that to secure a meeting with Trump, the Ukrainians would have to, quote, deliver investigations into the 2016 election, the Bidens, and Burisma.
There's just no subtlety.
Yes. I stated to Ambassador Sondland, this is from his testimony, his statement rather, that his statements were inappropriate, that the request to investigate Biden and his son had nothing to do with national security, and that such investigations were not something the National Security Council was going to get involved with or push. Following the briefing, Vindman
Deep State
reported his concerns to the National Security Council's top lawyer. And he notes that an investigation into the Bidens and Burisma would likely inject Ukraine's new president into U.S. politics and cause the struggling democracy to lose bipartisan support in Congress.
This is so deep. It's a deep state.
And here is Fox and Friends.
That's such a good drop.
Brian Kilmeade is going to weigh in. He's gotten the talking points. Can we trust this national security advisor who was in the Pentagon, was a lifetime military career guy in the Pentagon, assigned to be in the room with the president during this phone call? So one would imagine he's highly vetted. However, he left the Soviet Union when he was 3. All right, let's hear what Kilmeade has to say.
They start him young over there.
Kilmeade's got literally holding his talking points.
So if you look at this lieutenant colonel's background, he's got a Purple Heart. He got hit by an IED in Iraq. We also know he was born in the Soviet Union, emigrated with his family, young. He tends to feel simpatico with the Ukraine. Also, if he's been in that position for a while and says
he's a Ukrainian expert.
He's simpatico with it. That's what expertise is.
His job is literally to develop the strategy in competition with Russia, which we have. Someone is in position to do that in every. Probably we have someone with China. Probably someone with all the.
I think I should take the Ukraine brief. I'm simpatico with it.
Totally dude, right here.
Me, Ukraine, wavelength.
In that position for a while and says he's apolitical. To me, it must upset him much more how the previous administration handled the conflict with Ukraine, when the Russians came in and carved up the country and took Crimea, and we responded by giving them MREs and sleeping bags. This administration gave them money. What bothered the lieutenant colonel reportedly is a July 10th conversation between Ambassador Gordon Sondland and a July 25th call, which we all know has been transcribed. So we'll see from his point of view, but I don't know how much color he can add to this since we already have the call.
Bottom line is he heard the call. He complained to general counsel. He complained to his boss and said there were some concerns in that call. It's the same transcript that you and I have read. We've all read. Everyone has an opinion. Either you think that the president did quid pro quo or you don't. Right. Most of his base doesn't believe there was anything there, that's just how he does business.
Okay. First off, Kilmeade defeats his own point there by saying that, like, this guy should have a real problem with the last administration's behavior versus this administration. He very well may. But he's complaining about an impeachable offense that goes beyond. So, like, one would expect that based upon what Kilmeade has, the premise he's laid down, that this guy would say, like, I'll let that pass. But he was so offended by it. And we also know that he talked to Sondland, and Sondland now has also admitted quid pro quo. And
he wasn't talking about a policy dispute.
Right. And Ainsley Earhart then also makes the argument that, like, look, facts are irrelevant because his base doesn't care.
Which is the most astute thing I've ever heard on Fox and Friends.
Exactly right. And
yes,
gosh knows that we've been doing a lot of work on that level. But and here is was this Sean Duffy? Is that his name? Yeah. Sean Duffy. He's former congressman, right? From Wisconsin.
Former reality show star before that.
Basically, just this is the talking points, right? We saw this on Fox and Friends. We've seen it across the board. This is the talking points. Is like, this adds nothing new, as John Yoo would say. This is just color commentary. This is just more people who were witness to the impeachable offense.
I want to go back to the beginning here because it's been nagging at me the whole time here, which is that when I asked you about Colonel Vindman, the very first thing you said was he was Ukrainian. So yes or no, do you trust Ambassador Bill Taylor more because he was born in the United States? Where does the location of his birth matter? Mark Meadows, who I think you agree with, was born in France. Is he pro-French by definition? That's a pretty stunning comment you made just there. And it's remarkable and notable given that Laura Ingraham last night in her apparent talking points brought it up as well.
So I read his statement, John, and I'm sure you did as well. And it seems very clear that he is incredibly concerned about Ukrainian defense.
Simpatico.
I don't know that he's concerned about American policy, but his main mission was to make sure that the Ukraine got those weapons. I understand that. We all have an affinity to our homeland where we came from. Like me, I'm sure that Vindman has the same affinity. Or like Mark Meadows.
I'm just sorry. Are you suggesting that you would put Irish defense over U.S. defense? Is that what you're saying, Congressman Duffy?
So are we saying that by giving this money to the Ukraine, that absolutely is the money that's going to secure American national defense against Russia? I mean, I don't believe that.
What?
And so he's entitled.
What Sean Duffy believes is irrelevant. Whether even if that's the case that it would secure Ukraine against Russia is irrelevant in this instance because Congress appropriated the money. And so you can't just thwart the will of Congress because they won't investigate one of your potential running your opponents in the next election. That's why you can't do that.
You really think it's going to do so much good?
Wow,
so
really?
good.
Absolutely is the money that's going to secure American national defense against Russia. I mean, I don't believe that. And so he's entitled to his opinion. He has an affinity, I think, for the Ukraine. He speaks Ukrainian. He came from the country, and he wants to make sure they're safe and free. I understand that.
That's an asset for this country.
My point is the president is the one who gets to set the policy, and he's the one who looks out for America first.
He does not get to set the policy. He does not get to set the policy. The president has no authority to say, I'm going to let you get this money that Congress has already appropriated to you if you investigate Joe Biden. The president has no such authority to do that. But that is where they're trying to argue here.
policy, and he's the one who looks out for America first and the American taxpayer and the American citizens, and he'll take advice from all
Are you
kinds of
saying that
people,
Colonel Vindman,
including
a
Vindman,
decorated war veteran, isn't looking out for America first? Yes or no?
Literally what he's saying.
I don't know what he's doing. I think what
you can't say yes
John,
that Colonel Vindman.
All your viewers to read it.
You can't say that he's looking out for America first. You can't say that Colonel Vindman, a decorated war veteran, is looking out for America first.
Don't be. There's no reason for you to be surprised about this. Do we have that Max Cleland ad? This has been the Republican. The idea that anybody would get offended or even be surprised. Like, I can't believe you, a former congressman, is making the argument that this guy who went to Iraq does not have U.S. security interests in mind, doesn't remember what they did with Max Cleland, who was a triple amputee from Vietnam, in a wheelchair. When it came time for his re-election as a senator from Georgia, here is the ad. Who did this ad? I can't remember what it was. Saxby Chambliss.
America faces terrorists and extremist dictators. Max Cleland runs television ads claiming he has the courage to lead. He says he supports President Bush at every opportunity, but that's not the truth. Since July, Max Cleland has voted against the president's vital homeland security efforts 11 times. Max Cleland says he has the courage to lead, but the record proves Max Cleland is just misleading.
Wow. Yeah, he doesn't have America's interests in mind. I'm trying to think of who the campaign manager was. I think it's like one of the guys we hear from, one of the never Trumpers.
Wasn't Rick Wilson, was it?
It may have been, yes. I think it was Rick Wilson.
Yep, Rick Wilson.
There you have it. Shocking.
He ran the Saxby Chambliss campaign.
Shocking.
Or he was
how
the ad guy.
They would denigrate a man of service. I'm sure Rick Wilson has said this week or next week or last week. Maybe all three. Your modern Republican Party, folks. Don't be fooled. This is not about Trump. Not about Trump.